Hey y'all, this is Shon Gerber. Thanks for listening today. But before we get started, I wanted to update you on the launch of my CISSP Cyber Training membership for my listening audience. On March 5th, 2023, I began offering my monthly CISSP membership at a 60% off my already low price. This introductory offer is for $19 a month for the first year. With that insanely inexpensive price, you will be able to get all of my CISSP content, practice exam questions, all my current and upcoming curated content, and finally, me. As I'm growing my products and services for my site, you will be on the ground floor to take advantage of an offer that will never, ever come back again. So if you're planning on taking the exam in 2023, or if you want to learn more in cybersecurity, this will be the time for you to make a life and career-altering decision for you and your family. This amazing offer is only available until April 1st, 2023. And after that, it will be going back up in price at the still amazing price of $47 a month. So I highly recommend that you don't delay and sign up today. All right, let's get started. Welcome to the Reduce Cyber Risk and CISSP Training Podcast, where we provide you the training and tools you need to pass the CISSP exam the first time. Hi, my name is Shon Gerber, and I'm your host for this action-packed, informative podcast. Join me each week as I provide the information you need to pass the CISSP exam and grow your cybersecurity knowledge. All right, let's get started. Giddy up. Hey, y'all, it's Shon Gerber again with Reduce Cyber Risk Podcast. Hope you all are having a wonderful, blessed day this great week, and hope things that are happening in your lives that are making everything wonderful. So, as far as in the home front here in Wichita, Kansas, that is where I'm based out of. It is a great day. It's actually kind of cold today. The wind's picked out of the north at about 50 miles an hour, and I believe snow is blowing into the area. So, at the time I'm recording this podcast, it's in November, and so it's getting kind of a little bit chilly. So it's not too bad, but it's a little chilly. And as we get further into the winter months, it's going to be quite a bit cooler, is what they're saying at least. So this is the time that everything kind of huddles down here in the Midwest of the United States, and I just start thinking of warmer places that it would be nice to go to. And my wife's business, as I talked about before, is a Kona ice business. We do shaved ice, and it's interesting how that part of the business is slowed down now, but in about 3 months, it will kick back up again, and then we'll be very, very busy once again. So life is good, cannot complain at all, other than I have too many children at home, and sometimes they drive me nuts. But if any of you out there have children, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. I got 4 teenage kids at home, and of those 4, 3 are girls. So if you're a female out there, I apologize, but bottom line is these teenage girls are driving me nuts. So I'd be happy to live wherever you are right now at this point. All right, so let's get started into the training for today. Now, in this training, we're going to be focused on domain number 4, and this is communication and network security, and we're going to be focused around the CISSP, taking the CISSP and passing the test the first time, so that you don't have to do what I did and take it multiple times. And the ultimate goal, again, of this training that we provide on ShonGerber.com and at the Reduce Cyber Risk Podcast is to help you with your CISSP. And we're going to go over the training that we got. This is from an article I found online, and it's basically from Secure Ops, which is Secure Network Design. This is the title of the blog, and you can check them out at secureops.com. And the show notes, the links will be in the show notes, and you can check it out there. Now, there's some key aspects as we get into secure network design. The things you need to consider as you're taking the CISSP in the future, you potentially may be a security architect, you might be dealing with a CISO, a Chief Information Security Officer within a company, and so therefore, understanding network design is an extremely important task and thing that you must do. And when you're going through network design, it's important that you secure it in a way, you understand the network design well enough that you can end up actually securing this environment, and especially as we go into the cloud and we get moving in that direction, it's extremely important that you do understand how to adequately secure your environment. Now, when you're dealing with the network security design and architecture, that is basically you're kind of figuring out the roles that you need to do that. And their security architecture, it utilizes organizations and current resources. So you take, when you're looking at architecture from your environment, what do you currently have in place and how would you utilize those? So as an example, let's say, do you have current firewalls that are in place? How are you utilizing those? How are you positioning those? Are those set up in a good spot to best protect your information and your data? The secure design around that, and that might be where, how do you have communication with, let's just say, your facility that you're working at, that you have your business at, and how is it communicating to, let's say, cloud servers or anything that's in the cloud? And you need to understand those concepts, and this comes down to, you really must have a broad brush understanding of, one, networking, but then two, how do they network within these various environments as well. Now, each has a role, but other factors can influence the effectiveness of it. And so when you're looking at security, you must have leadership buy-in. Now, who could that leadership be? Well, depending upon the size of your company and who you work for, it could be anywhere from the president to the CFO to the CIO, and it could be potentially just you, but ideally you'd want to have multiple people involved in how you are architecting the security within your environment. You also need to have the technical capability to be able to do it. It's one thing to be able to say, yes, we're going to make a secure environment, and then not have the ability to do it. Now, finding those resources can be expensive. If you don't have them internally, they can cost a lot of money. And so you need to consider that as well, do you have the technical capability in-house, or do you have to go to a third party to get that information? And then lastly, what is your budget? Now, depending upon most organizations, they have a budget that they have to stay within, and that budget is a certain percentage of their overall spend for the year. And it could be as little as 1%, 2%. I've seen it high as 10%. A lot of it comes down to, where does your business see the risk, and then how do they value security to be able to help them mitigate that risk. Now, there's four core tenets of a secure network design based on what Secure Ops is talking about, and I agree with them on this. You understand the value of the systems and the assets. So you need to understand, what is the value of these systems, and what are they worth, and are they something that you want to protect? So, for an example, let's say you are like Kentucky Fried Chicken, and Kentucky Fried Chicken in the United States, and I've seen it all over the world when I've traveled the globe, they have awesome chicken. Now, they also serve other stuff, but let's just say you're going after their chicken. Well, they have the 11 herbs and spices that makes the KFC chicken finger licking good. And so you need to understand, what are the systems and what are the values of these systems that are storing this data. So is it your HR data for Kentucky Fried Chicken? Is it how you keep your 11 herbs and spices protected for Kentucky Fried Chicken? What are the systems, and what are the assets, and how much are they worth to you? Network segmentation, you need to make sure that it's segregated. Do you have process networks that need to be segregated from an actual business network? Like recently there was an explosion down in Orange, Texas, where a chemical plant blew up, or part of it did. Are those networks segregated? So in the event something bad happens, how do you keep hackers out? Monitoring and prevention, how do you deal with that from your monitoring, and you're watching what's going on within that organization to make sure that nobody is stealing your information? And then alerting. Do you have an alerting capability in place that in the event somebody does get in or something bad happens on your network, you can prevent it, or you at least can see what's going on? And then lastly, it's least privilege access controls. So we talk about role-based access and how it's up based on the individual. Well, those controls have to have, you want to have people to have the least amount of privilege they possibly can. You don't want people to be able to get access within an organization that don't need the access or don't have the rights to the access. So understanding the least privilege is really important as you're dealing with trying to find your network design for your environment. Now, as we talked about understanding the value, that's a key piece of this is actually asset identification. So understanding, where are the assets, what are they? And this can be as simple as doing a LAN sweep or some sort of network scanning to be able to tell you specifically what is in your environment. And asset identification is a key piece of this. It really is. And this is where people do fall down quite a bit as it relates to their environment. And things will be put in, nobody annotates it, nobody knows about it, and then after about 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you have all this different equipment that is sprawled through your environment, and therefore now you must deal with it. So those are key pieces around assets. It's probably one of the most critical things that you do is finding out what is in your environment. What are the different assets there? So here's some examples of assets. You have databases, data files, archive data. Software is applications, operating systems. If you have voice over IP systems. Physical would be your actual computer equipment, communication equipment, storage media, etc., etc. And so these different assets are what you need to start annotating. Now, here's the rub. It ain't sexy. Nobody likes doing it because it's so hard to keep. And therefore, what happens, and as soon as you create it, almost the moment that you create it, it becomes stale. So it really is important, but again, that's why most people don't do it. Now, when you're dealing with network segmentation, this should be accomplished via value and risk. So many companies, former militaries, myself, it would be like the military would say, we got to protect it all. And they will spend gazillions of dollars protecting all of the information. But if you work for any sort of business, you're going to realize real quick, there ain't no gazillions of dollars available to you. And so since that is the case, you're going to have to figure out and work with your leadership on what is the value of these assets and what are the risks to these assets to ensure that they're properly protected. So as an example, let's say back to the 11 herbs and spices. I have the vault that is on a computer. It's got Cyber Vault that is protecting my 11 herbs and spices recipe, and that would be, I would think, somewhat important. However, there's a router that's hooked to a chicken masher upper thing, right? And this computer is hooked to the chicken masher, and the chicken masher is pretty much low risk. There's no way it can jump out and chop anybody's heads off. It is just a really little masher, and you really can't even get your fingers in it. So the risk of somebody taking over the chicken masher is pretty low. So therefore, I wouldn't put a whole lot of protections around the chicken masher, but I would put a lot more protections around where you keep your 11 herbs and spices. So that's an example of that. I have an example on the slides that basically is demilitarized zone, your DMZ. That would be an area where you'd want to have higher level of protection because it's transitioning between zones. But at the end of the day, you got to value what is that equipment, what is it worth to you. Now you're dealing with your logical and your physical access. So your Purdue model, this basically deals with process control networks. So networks, as we talked about on the Reduce Cyber Risk podcast, we've said that there's various networks, and these networks are segregated based on your process control environment and your business environment. So your process control environment is what makes things happen. Your business environment is where leadership goes and sends emails back and forth to each other saying how great you are and how great I am, right? No, I'm just joking, of course. But that's the differences, right? So a VLAN, what you can use is also a VLAN to help provide logical and physical separation. And a VLAN would be a logical separation. And it is a virtual LAN, or a virtual local area network. And this is where older operating systems that you can't put protections on, you can put them on a VLAN, and then you can watch what goes in and what goes out. And therefore, other systems cannot touch this network. It's a great way to segregate your network. There's a lot of pros in doing this, as far as it can keep the bad guys out. It can also keep you having control of what's there. The downside is it adds a lot more to manage and maintain. And so it will take some work to do something like that. When you're dealing with monitoring and prevention, there are various tools that can help you with this. There's an intrusion detection systems, intrusion prevention systems, and data loss prevention, and then various logging and monitoring types of tools. So your intrusion detection is what we call an IDS, or India Delta Sierra. Intrusion prevention is an India Papa Sierra, and data loss prevention is DLP. Data loss is Delta Lima Papa. Yes, there we go. Get your military acronyms in for the day. No, it's actually phonetic, or no, what is that? I can't remember what they call that again. Oh, it's been so long out of the military, I'm forgetting. So anyway, you got to do your phonics, hooked on phonics. Yeah, that's not it, but we could talk about that later. All right, security incident event manager, your SIM. This is what washes. It doesn't wash anything. It doesn't do anything close. It's a key piece of equipment that watches what goes on within your environment, and it creates an alerting environment for you in your SIM. And again, it's a key piece. It can be something that can be very small if you have a small environment, or it can be something quite large and extremely expensive, depending upon what you have a capability. Now, this can also be outsourced to other parties. For small businesses, I'd actually recommend this because you won't be able to afford the skill set to be able to manage it properly. And you're just kind of wasting your money if you put it in your environment without the people to manage it. Your Security Operations Center, your SOC, those are the people that manage the SIM and many of the other protection tools that are in your environment is a Security Operations Center. Now, as we're dealing with logging and alerting, there's a collection of various system and event logs, and these system and event logs create a logging and alerting environment. Now, this allows for quick identification, correlation, and mitigation of malicious activities. And so these activities, it just basically looks for anything bad going on. They'll be generated from different logs, will be generated from whatever might be in your environment. This can be on premises or in the cloud. And they will vary. The logs will vary from on-prem and cloud environments. So don't just assume that if you got an on-prem situation, you got all your logs. That is not necessarily the case. So the other thing to consider about logs is they can get very voluminous very quickly, and because they get so large and unwieldy, they can become very expensive if you want to store them for significant amounts of time. So keep that in mind. But they can be a great resource to help you find out what's going on in your environment, if there's any good guys or bad guys. Well, you assume everybody's good, right? But is there bad guys in your environment? The other thing that you need to consider around logs is just from a compliance point of view, how do you manage all of those resources? Because that can get overwhelming, but I highly recommend that you get your compliance folks involved with whatever you do in this space. Now, there's also the least privilege access controls. This is an extremely important piece of the overall puzzle. And again, this comes down to restricting people's access who do not need access. So least privilege, if they don't need it, they shouldn't have it. And those are important pieces. This can be applied to almost everything that you deal with and relates to security. So there's the technological things that you can put in place, but then there is the people and processes piece where least privilege comes into as well. So it's important that you consider this when you build out the security for your environment. As an example, it could be database controls, Active Directory global groups, or specific applications. Okay, so all of those things can be considered could have least privilege added to them. Or if you're like totally don't care, you can just throw it all out there and just see what happens. So I don't recommend that, but hey, you can do that. That's up to you. But the bottom line is you need solid processes or an automated application to help you with this. All right, so that is what I looked at online as far as it relates to secure ops and secure network design. Again, shout out for Secure Ops. They did a good job with that blog post, and that's just kind of the synopsis of that. So, well, before we roll on to our next CISSP training, which will be over Domain 4. Okay, so we're going to roll into the next piece of this. This is Domain 4.2. And some secure network components. Now, this is right out of the CISSP training manuals that I've been going over for quite a couple of years now, and you'll be seeing this information in my video training as well. And a lot of this stuff, as you will know, that comes out of what we just talked about above. This all is meant to blend together and to reaffirm the fact of what we just kind of talked about. Again, if you go over it over and again, then things tend to sink in after a little while. So that's the purpose of this. And what the CISSP training is as we go over this audio training, you will, as you're driving to and from or going to and from work, you will listen to this and go, okay, I need to go to bed because this guy's voice is putting me to sleep. Or you will listen to this and go, okay, that's cool. I remember what a VLAN is now. So you may decide that. Or you may just decide this is crazy and I will go listen to some guy that's listening to how he uses the chicken masher on his chickens. All right. So 4.2, secure network components. Operation of hardware is the topic. Now, we talked about before, security is you need to consider it from a network and component level. Now, there's different types of internal and external networks. There's an intranet and an extranet. Now, the intranet is a private internal network. The extranet is a blend of intranet and internet. So the internet is the World Wide Web, and intranet is your internal network, and that is the extranet is a blend of the both. Okay. Now, we talked about earlier as well about the DMZ or demilitarized zone. Now, this is the internet and the business network and where they meet. Now, you can also put a DMZ between the business network and the process networks. That's where they meet, and that's a DMZ as well. So there's really there's multiple locations you can put a DMZ, but theoretically there are two locations. One is from the internet to the business, and then from the business to the process. Segmentation is virtual local area networks. We talked about them and how important that is to segregate your data and to segregate your network using VLANs. Now, network access controls. When you have a network access control in place, these are strong security policies that you need to have that will help you with your access controls. I highly recommend that you put these in place. When you're dealing with this aspect of it, this is probably the one area that people fall down on, especially, and I will admit even I do, is having good solid security policies in place. I need to get better at that, and then when you have the policies, you have something to at least reference to. Without the policies, you're kind of making it up as you go every time, and that's not always a good thing to do. These network access controls do control the access to your environment, and they also have automated security controls or device agents which can do filtering, detection, response, all of those things. These are just restricting who can get access to the network itself. Another thing is a firewall. Now, you've probably heard of these, and there's a movie out there called Firewall, the movie to save you. No, that's who was in that? That was, oh gosh, what was the guy? Land Before Time. No, that's not it. Raiders of the Lost Ark, dude. Yeah, he was in it. Firewall. So that's another one that you could go check out. Probably not that good. It's okay. It's all right. It's just a lot of hype over a firewall. Essential. They're essential for managing and filtering traffic. They are the gates that allow in and out. Now, when you're dealing with clouds, the firewalls, in air quotes, are the security groups. So these are essential for managing and filtering traffic coming in and out. And these rules are configured to allow only specific traffic. Data packet inspection is available, so the data going in and out is being looked at by the Eye of Sauron, and it is looking at for anything that is malformed or is not right. And then it's going to say, hey, this is a problem, you need to fix it. Or it won't, because in many cases, that kind of level of inspection can cause a significant resource on your firewalls. There's also intrusion detection systems, which look at heuristics and signatures. So a signature is something like you have your virus and they take a fingerprint of it. That is a signature. Heuristics would be this virus is the combination of the signature, plus it's like doing really funky stuff that it shouldn't be doing. Then that would be heuristics. It's based on what is that thing doing? What is it not doing? And the firewalls are typically the backbone of the security appliances that you will see out there. And you'll see a lot of these. But as we get into the cloud, they're changing the name and the nomenclature to that. Now, I will say that firewalls are still used in the cloud. But the main thing that restricts and manages access in and out of an environment is what we call a security group. Firewall inspection capability, there is a plethora of options for that. There's static packet filtering. This analyzes the message header. So if the message is coming in or the data is coming in, it's looking at the message header to understand that. And then it's also looking at specific rules around the traffic when it's looking at a specific static packet filtering. It's just basically focused on one packet and what does it do. Application level firewalls, these are commonly called a proxy firewall, and it copies packets from one location to another. This is typically in the layer 7 of the OSI model, or the 7-layer burrito, which is part of the OSI model. It's the application layer, and it is commonly called, again, the proxy firewall. Stateful inspection firewalls, these are a dynamic inspection, and this is where you have to have some really beefy firewalls. And when I say beefy, ones that have a lot of computing power, because they will be doing dynamic inspection. And they typically fall within layer 3 and 4, which is your network and transport layers of your OSI model, or the 7-layer burrito. Again, stateful inspection firewalls. And then we roll into a next generation firewall, which is a multi-purpose. Now, I will say with these are kind of, I think the jury's out on these. When you get into firewalls, and these multi-purpose ones they have an intrusion detection, they have packet inspection, they basically have the Ginsu knife, they have a Swiss Army knife, they can do pretty much everything for you. They're okay. I mean, you have to have a really strong system. They can be very effective in small environments. They do provide VPN capability, quality of service, which basically will help if your traffic is not meeting up to standards and it's got packet failing, is dropping packets. It will then might do things with the information to ensure that it's maintaining its quality of service. An example would be Skype. If Skype is dropping calls, the quality QoS will then kick in and it will try to make changes to allow that communication to occur better.
So there's that. They also have NATS, which is your network blank translation. I'm forgetting that acronym right now off the top of my head, but basically that is what will say if you have your different IP addresses that are in place, it will NAT out a certain subset of IP addresses. So there's NAT, and then it also has, like I said before, it has to be very heavy in the horsepower aspect. I will say when you're using the firewall for packet inspection and VPN, QoS, I think it's pretty good. But when you get into IDS and IPS capabilities, I'm sure there's probably plenty out there that this works well, but my experience has been not as positive in this space as it possibly could be. So I guess that's my 2 cents in regards to the next generation firewalls. I do use them, and I have used them in many places, and they work very, very well in most use cases. But there are times when they may not be the best tool for what you're trying to accomplish. All right, so that is the CISSP training for Domain 4.2 Secure Network Components, and this is operation of hardware. All right, so let's finish this up, guys and gals, and we're going to roll into the CISSP exam questions. Now, these questions came from techtarget.com and pulled some questions directly from ISC Squared, which is the governing body that provides you the CISSP. So hopefully if you don't know that by now, you now do. All right, so question number uno. Serve as a gateway between a trusted and untrusted network that gives you limited authorized access to untrusted hosts. Okay. Serve as a gateway between trusted and untrusted networks that gives you limited authorized access to untrusted hosts. A, layer 6. Don't know what that really means, just layer 6. B, trace route. Okay. C, bridges. D, bastion hosts. Okay, so if you don't know, layer 6, I don't know what that means. B, trace route. Well, yeah, that's a trace route, but that doesn't really give you a gateway. Now you got bridges. Okay, well, a bridge, you can bridge your network. That may be bastion host. If you don't know what that means, well then, okay, maybe that's probably it. And you're right, it is a bastion host. Okay, so it's between a bridge and a bastion host. And if you don't know, guess. Okay, and it would be bastion hosts. Question 2, a basic network mapping technique that helps narrow the scope of an attack. So again, mapping technique that helps narrow the scope of attack. A, firewall. B, voice over IP. C, ping scanning. D, bridges. All right, basic network mapping technique. Firewalls ain't that. Voice over IP ain't that. Ping scanning is a network you can map with ping scanning, but that's very inefficient and very ineffective. So then the answer would be bridges. Yes, if you don't know, it would be bridges. Again, narrow down these questions so that you have a good shot at least getting the right one. Layering model structured into 4 layers: link layer, network layer, transport layer, and application layer. All right, so A, remote procedure calls. B, TCP IP or Department of Defense model. C, screen scraper. Or D, trace route. So again, layering models structured into 4 layers: a link layer, a network layer, a transport layer, and an application layer. So now you're layering this. This is a model that came up with somebody. Okay, model. A, RPC, which is remote procedure call. B, TCP IP or Department of Defense DoD model. Or C, screen scraper. Or D, trace route. And the answer is TCP IP or Department of Defense DoD model. Again, when you're taking a CISSP, sometimes I feel like it's stump the dummy in many cases. So you're going to have to kind of break down these questions. And if you think about it and you do it logically, you're going to be able to narrow this down quite a bit to where you think, this doesn't make sense. That one doesn't make sense. Well, that one makes sense, even if it is a little confusing. So those are the things you're going to have to do with the CISSP exam. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed the training today on this podcast and everything's going well in your world. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. Thanks so much for joining me today on my podcast. If you like what you heard, please leave a review in iTunes, as I would greatly appreciate your feedback. Also, don't forget the 60% of my membership at the CISSP cybertraining.com will be ending the 1st of April, 2023. So sign up today for this once-in-a-lifetime sales event. Thanks again for listening. See ya.
Hey, thanks again for listening today. It's been my pleasure to prep you for the CISSP exam. Are you interested, though, in some free CISSP exam questions? Head on over to freecissprequestions.com and sign up to join my email list, and you'll receive access for 60 free CISSP questions each and every month for the next 6 months. That's a total of 360 questions just for signing up with CISSP Cyber Training. You'll also gain access to other free CISSP resources, so just head on over to freecissprequestions.com and sign up, or head on over to CISSPcybertraining.com and sign up today. Have a wonderful day, and we will catch you on the flip side. See ya.